I recently showed off the Z66X Android TV box in a previous video. It was my awesome tech gadgets for under $30. But I really wanted to show off what this box can actually do because for under $30, it's pretty impressive. So stick around to find out more. It's TechWiz time. Hey guys, hope you have an awesome week. My name is Jonathan and this is TechWizTime, where I create technology tutorial and review videos. In this video, I'm going to go into a little bit more depth with the Z66X Android TV box. So you can see there's the box itself, but what else is inside? You get a remote control, of course, a HDMI cable, and a 5V 2A power supply. Oh, you also get a user manual as well, but I don't know who uses those anymore. Just plug and play and forget about it. Okay, so let's talk about specs. We've got a Quad Core 1.5 GHz CPU inside with a Mali-450 GPU. There's 2 GB of RAM and 16 GB of storage. The RAM is only at DDR3 speed though. There's no Bluetooth on board, so if that's a must-have, then that's a killer for this one. Wi-Fi comes in at 2.4 GHz and the Ethernet is at 100 megabit. Interestingly though, this box is rooted and it's running Android 7.1. And the other interesting thing is that this box actually comes in at under $30. So let's have a look at the actual ports on this itself. So on this side here, we've got the micro SD card slot and 2 USB 2.0 ports. The other side has nothing, the front has nothing as well. But on the rear, we've got an SP-Diff port, a LAN port, a 3.5mm headphone jack port, HDMI and 5V power. So with specs and ports out of the way, let's have a look at some benchmarks. In A1 SD Bench, we're looking at internal read speeds of 42 megabytes per second and internal write speeds of 12 megabytes per second. So no winners there. The micro SD card read speed comes in at 17 megabytes per second and the SD card write speed comes in at 13 megabytes per second. The RAM speed only comes in at 1504 megabytes per second though. So not that impressive in terms of the actual write and read speeds there, but still, it's capable. Next up, I test the Wi-Fi and the LAN speeds using speed test. So the Wi-Fi download speed is at 31 megabits per second, whereas the upload speed is at 30 megabits per second. When it comes to testing the LAN though, we see we get a 90 megabit per second download rate and an upload rate of 37 megabits per second. So not too bad if you're connected to a wired network. Next up, I test the N22 benchmark tool and we get an overall score of 30491 with a 3D score of 1488, a UX score of 11,778, a CPU score of 12,769, and a RAM score of 4,456. Next up with Geekbench, we get a single core score of 401 and a multi-core score of 1090. So looking over at 3D Mark now, the slingshot test wouldn't work at all due to the GPU that it's got on board. So we tested out some Ice Storm, and the basic Ice Storm score came in at 3080, whereas Ice Storm Extreme came in at 2410. So again, nothing really impressive there. On to streaming and media now. So out of the box, Netflix did work, and YouTube was maxed out at a 4K file at 720p resolution. Next up, we look at Kodi, and we do the Big Buck Bunny test. The 30 frames per second file worked perfectly fine, which is not too bad, but the 60 frames per second file didn't have a chance. Again, we test out the Jellyfish file, and these files come in at 55, 140, 200 and 400 megabits per second, and the only one that would play, unfortunately, was the 55 megabits per second file. So the CPU just can't handle it, unfortunately. All right, so we're streaming all that out of the way. Next up, we test out some gaming. Now, generally, Android gaming is going to be fine, but I like to have a look at emulation and see what emulators actually work on this. So the first one up is the PSP emulator, PPSSPP. And we can see Power Stone is only getting between 25 and 35 frames per second, so not that great overall. And same with God of War, we're only getting 5 to 10 frames per second here, so PSP gaming is probably out. Up next though is the Dreamcast emulator Raycast. And testing out Sonic Adventure 2, we see we're only getting 25 to 30 frames per second out of a max of 60 frames per second, so a little bit slow. But next up we test out Shenmue and we're only getting 20 to 30 frames per second here, so still playable, but there are going to be slowdowns. And lastly, we've got the fighting game Soul Calibur, and again here we're only getting 30 to 35 frames per second, so it's not getting to that full 60 frames per second. And lastly, I test out PlayStation emulation with FPSE. Now this is where it gets interesting. It'll play Final Fantasy VII at the full 60 frames per second. So by the looks of it, this will play PlayStation 1 and lower. Probably not N64 though, because that struggles on even the higher end devices. Metal Gear Solid though comes in at 50 to 60 frames per second, so again, completely playable. And even more impressive, Tekken 3, which struggles on some devices, we're seeing here 45 to 55 frames per second, which isn't the full 60 frames per second, but still quite playable. So after all that, for a box that's less than $30, I'm pretty impressed. Like if you're just looking at some lower end emulation, it's gonna be cheaper than a Raspberry Pi, and it's gonna be all in one with a remote. So you can enjoy all those classics on the PlayStation, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and Mega Drive. Anything you can throw at it that's less than a PlayStation should work on this machine. So who is this device really for? Well, it's not really for the high-end tech gadget lover, like the NVIDIA Shield TV Box gets my big stamp of approval, and I would recommend that to anyone that can afford the $199. But who this is for, it's for that person that's, doesn't have a lot of money, they want to get into, say, retro gaming and so forth, or it's for your mum or dad who doesn't understand technology that much, but wants to have something to upgrade their normal TV to a little bit more of a smarter TV. Plus it comes with the benefit of having Android 7, so win-win. If you do want to look at grabbing one of these for yourself, I have put a link down in the description below for GearBest. And if you do use our links, we do get a little bit of a kickback from that. So it doesn't cost you anything, but it helps support this channel. So a huge thanks. So what did you think of this cheap Android box? Is it worth its price? Leave me a comment down below and let me know. If you're not a subscriber to this channel, then make sure you do. And if you are a subscriber, then make sure you hit that bell icon so you get notified of my new videos whenever they get released. If you can like and share this video with someone that needs a cheap Android box, then that would be so helpful for this channel and I would be so grateful. And as always, imagine, learn, create.